Good morning. Welcome to our video Q&A on classic Mercedes. Today our first question comes from Pradeep. Pradeep owns a 1993 500e and he's up in Pennsylvania where we have hot summers and harsh winters. Pradeep wrote me saying that his wiring harness, his check valves at his fuel pump, and some other small parts in his engine had left him with serious starting and performance issues. However, after the replacement of those components, he still was not completely satisfied with his vehicle's hot start. Pradeep sent me 2 videos underlining the difference between his cold start, which was immediate, and his hot start, which was somewhat prolonged. So one of the topics we're going to discuss here are hot starting issues on Mercedes, especially after you've had a traumatic injury to the car, such as a fried wiring harness or something similar. The biggest problem with starting issues is that they can be embarrassing and annoying. It's really frustrating when you get in your Mercedes and you start it and it starts immediately cold, but when you start it hot, it stumbles or it takes a long time to turn over. In the case of Pradeep's car, it takes about 4 to 5 seconds of cranking hot, whereas it only takes about 1 or 2 cold. Is this a problem? Well, it depends on where you're looking. Most of the Mercedes from 1992 to 1995 were affected with wiring harness issues. And even after the wiring harnesses are replaced, serious other problems can arise. For example, we had Bill Cosby's 1995 G320 in our shop for several months. His truck had a bad wiring harness as well, but even after replacement of the wiring harness, there were still prolonged issues that arose, and a lot of them came from the engine computer. Yes, that's right, the engine computer had a short in it that was keeping the truck from starting altogether. Now, while this may not be Pradeep's exact problem, it could be tied to a failing engine computer or another part that people often overlook, which is the throttle actuator. The throttle actuator also has a wiring harness, and because of the wiring harness and the throttle actuator's decay, just like the main engine harness, similar hot starting issues can erupt as well. Anyway, in your case, Pradeep, I think you got lucky because even though you have a 4 to 5 second hot starting delay, your car seems to start pretty well. While I would consider replacing my fuel pressure regulator and possibly in the future my throttle actuator because of potential harness issues, your car has fared much better than most. Our next question comes from my friend Kim Staskas in San Francisco, California. Kim recently, in his 1969 280 SEL, suffered an injury to the cognac lower bench seat in the rear of said car. After attempting to repair the cognac lower bench seat and the die did not match, Kim now has to find a new lower bench seat because there is no way he can replicate the original finish. Well, this question is another very interesting question, and this has to do with interior issues on pre-1972 Mercedes. See, Kim, and other owners of these cars specifically, it's nearly impossible to replicate the original finishes of an interior, and so there are a lot of considerations you have to make before sending your Mercedes to any upholstery shop. Some good questions to ask are, will my interior look the same as it did before? Has this person been able to carry out work successfully on other Mercedes from the same era? And if so, can I actually look at it and inspect it and make sure it's good? Another question is, if I'm replacing my interior, would it be smarter for me to go look for a used piece to replace the one that's damaged if all the rest are in good order? My answer to that last question would be yes, absolutely. So if you're looking at used pieces of seats, upholstery, and leather, some other things to inspect besides just the covering are the internal horsehair pad, which tends to crumble and deteriorate with age if stored in an improper climate, or the springs themselves to make sure that they are not rusty. When you're looking at interior pieces especially, you want to make sure that they have not been taken apart and tampered with. Our last question comes from the owner of a 240D who has had his car for 325,000 miles. Because I haven't had his permission yet to use his name, he's going to remain anonymous, but I'm sure when he sees this video, he'll know that I'm speaking with him. The 240D, upon acceleration, has a vibration that occurs at very low speeds, usually between 0 and 20 miles an hour. It is an automatic transmission car, and the problems arose prior to a transmission replacement. Now, driveline vibrations in older Mercedes, especially diesels because of their high amount of torque upon startup acceleration, are very common. They can stem from issues with the transmission mount, such as separation, collapse, or cracking, or problems with the drive shaft flex disc and support. The drive shaft flex disc can generate several different issues, everything from cracking to becoming out of round to issues from misinstallation. Finally, the drive shaft support can develop a crack in it that will lead to a full-blown tear where the outer ring of the drive shaft support is bolted to the car, but the inner ring is almost free-floating because it is completely separated. This will cause a knock, a resonance, or a vibration at low speed until the torque application of the drive shaft levels out and the car does not vibrate anymore. Anyway, at 325,000 miles in your 240D, you may also want to consider having your driveline service rebuilt by companies like Driveline Service of Portland. While the U-joint in your drive shaft is not replaceable with a conventional tool, these companies have fabricated new U-joints that they press in that actually have grease fittings. So you will be assured that your drive shaft will go for another 325,000 miles or more, since it can now be properly lubricated. Anyway, our last question comes from a gentleman. Uh-oh.
Just keep going. It doesn't work.
Our last question.
Or maybe second to last, because you already did the last one.
Oh, that's right.
But that's okay. We'll just say for another day. And
Okay.
then I'll just another question. That way we can edit it and fit it in.
That's fine. I think 3 is good.
Okay, but again, you don't have to say the last question. Just say the question. You have a question.
I'll probably close. Is that good?
Yeah, you can close.
Okay, great. Anyway, thank you all for sending your questions in. If any of you have questions about your Mercedes, please send them to info@pierrehedary.com. That's info@pierrehedary.com. Not only will you receive an email response, but we'll also do a video response if your question applies to a broad range of Mercedes-Benz automobiles. So good luck, happy motoring, and enjoy driving your Mercedes-Benz. Thank you for watching our show, and we hope to see you next time.